I don't have any hate in my heart. I'm actually not hateful of the people that we talk about. I don't hate the people that we blame or that are in charge or that maybe even do the things around us in society that we often criticize. What I am is I'm angry. I'm angry because there are times where we feel like we put people into elevated positions of power, whether it be government, whether it be health, or institutions of education, religion. And the leaders that we've chosen or have been elevated to those positions, they often take advantage of their power. They often take advantage of us as the populace for their own benefit. I feel like the world is filled with great, amazing people that actually care about two things. They care about their families and their safety. And when these people, they use their power and position and they lean on you, it's actually really fucked up. And that's why I'm angry. But I feel like as the people gather, as we create community, as people start to notice together, I think there's strength in numbers. I'm happy you guys are here today. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to the Matt Kim Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kim, joined by my co-host, Mr. Peter Saddington.
My heart goes out to you, my friends. It's time to check in, Saar. It is time to check in. What's up, everybody? It's the Matt Kim Podcast.
It is an amazing day. I am very grateful to be alive today.
Yes, it is nice to be alive, that's for sure.
You know, I think often we take the little things for granted, and we are so concerned about maybe these existential threats in society around us. But sometimes it's worth just taking a quick breather, appreciating your family, appreciating your loved ones, appreciating your community, appreciating the people that commit and give us their time. Appreciate you guys.
Absolutely, friends.
It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day, and I like that. I like the fact that we can take a moment in humility and say, we are appreciative of you, and we are appreciative of life, and frankly, the opportunity to be alive so that we can speak on the things that we're noticing.
Correct. And if you have not checked out Soju yet, definitely go check it out, soj.oo. It is growing. It is active. It is where I feel like the internet and our community is starting to gather, and it is constantly growing. We are getting to all types of different topics, different conversations, and where it is now is not where it will always be. It's just the framework of where it begins. It's just a place where you can build on top of, which is why we call it a platform and not a forum or an app or a whatever. It's a platform. Other things will be built on top. Go in now, check in Saar, and get involved. Get started, because this is just the beginning. You get to be a part of the first few people that are like, dude, I was there when it all began. And it's going to be an amazing story to tell. And do you know what? You're going to tell your grandkids one day about it.
Oh, man. You remember 90 years ago when I joined that Soju? It was Soju.
So don't miss out on the opportunity. Get involved now, soj.oo.
Jump in it, my friends. It's an awesome opportunity to try something new, right? Because you guys have used the Reddits, you've used the Instagrams, you've used the TikToks, you've used the Snapchattaroos, you've used the Tweeters and the LinkedIns. You know, Soju is a nice blend of some of the best features of those applications. So I would highly recommend that you check it out, soj.oo. Check it out right now. Make sure that you check in SAR. And if I can add a little, if you're going to comment today, not only check in SAR, but also tell us what you're grateful for.
Amazing.
Tell us what you're grateful for. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, maybe just being alive is all good enough.
And there are people on Soju running around the site right now looking for your alt.
No one's found it yet. No one's pinged me.
Found it.
No one's pinged me.
You?
No, you haven't even pinged me.
I have no idea.
I signed up on the day. So the only evidence you can find is if you go to that day and you look at the signups, and I'm one of those signups.
And I thought for a second it may be the guy named SAR1.
Nope.
I just had to throw it out there to see if I get the
Nope.
reaction.
That was easy. Nope.
Because that guy's running around and just sawing to everything, which is hilarious.
I think you could probably consider the fact that I don't have that much time to saw everything, so probably not me. But I'm definitely under wraps, my friends. $100 is still on the line.
Yes.
For the individual who is able to successfully call out the alt account of the Doge Lord.
Yeah, I think Goyam is running around. He's like very convinced he's gonna find you. He's been starting threads to find you and like try to like draw you out.
Okay. All right.
The hunt is on.
I am. Let's just say I am prolific usually in posting in most other places, but Soju, I'm very tactical and strategic. So it's kind of like what's the Groundhog Day, right? When the groundhog comes up, looks around, sees a shadow. It's like, oh, see the shadow? I don't think I'm going to post there. It might be too obvious for me to post there. So I'm pulling back a little bit on the posting, but it's by design.
So go to Soju, find Peter's alt. $100 on the line.
$100 on the line. I think Matt was willing to double it up.
We'll double it up.
Oh,
we'll
200 bones.
We'll
Let's
double
go,
it up.
guys. If you can find it out, let's get it done. This is the first treasure hunt of Soju.
It is. It's
That's
fun.
cool.
I think it's cool. I think it's cool.
Find me, guys.
So today, I've been thinking about this a lot because we are trying to build out technologies, and you're involved in Web3, obviously, and we're constantly thinking of solutions for what the future will look like.
Right.
But I think in order to design those solutions, and this is stuff that we kind of talk about casually or maybe think about, but maybe it's a good opportunity to have this actual conversation. And that conversation is, we see all of the policies being put in place now with the new Trump administration. We've seen the trends of it over the last 4 years. What do you think life will look like in 20 years?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of unknowns to it, but if I can just back up a little bit. One of the things that has been always preeminent on my mind and on my heart is the next generation, right? And we've talked about how much we value our children and we want to make life and the future better for our children than what we had. I think that's table stakes. Everybody understands that. And one of the things that I've always been interested in is building applications. Now, I was fortunate enough in 2011 to learn about Bitcoin, and then I got serious into Bitcoin and started building applications in 2016. That's also when I started doing YouTube and getting shadow banned and all of that fun stuff. But the core principle is the same, is that during those times of 2011 to 2016, this is post the 2008 financial crisis, the housing crisis, all of that stuff, for me, it made sense for me to begin building myself applications in the decentralized finance, the cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin space because I wasn't satisfied with the monetary systems, monetary policies, and the monetary legislation that we saw in the 2008 crisis and obviously moving up till now. And so I always considered myself building in the digital space as part of my sanctification. And what I mean by that is I am being active in my own salvation. I am trying to actively build better systems, products, platforms, technologies, and tools so that potentially my children would be able to use better financial instruments, better tools, and better products that would make their life better. And so that's always been my kind of driver. It's like I don't see the right applications being built out there right now. So instead, I'll either invest in ones that are good or build it myself. And I think, if I may, as bringing this context to bear here, I think that's what you've done with Soju, right? We've traversed this for about 3 years now, and it's about time for us to be assertive around building our own things. And so, if I can just add some potatoes to the pot here, it would simply be, do I know what's going to happen in 20 years? No, I think we're going to talk about what we could potentially do to prepare for that. But I think one big aspect is be active in your own salvation, right? Save yourself. Who's coming to save you, Matt?
Ain't no one coming to save you.
We know this to be true. Ain't nobody coming to save you. So in many cases, you have to take personal responsibility for your own life. And I think that's probably going to be a big theme of what we talk about today.
Well, you touched on it briefly, so I want to just throw this out there first. Trump just announced that he is going to have a Bitcoin reserve.
Yes, it's going to include other things too.
It's going to include other things. And it's interesting that he tweeted the other things first.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's going to be a Bitcoin reserve and then include some other things. I don't know why he...
Can I change the
He
language
said
he
it that
said?
way?
Because the tweet actually said crypto reserve, not Bitcoin reserve.
He did, but I think...
But later he said, I do love Bitcoin and Ethereum.
And then Henry Lundwick, which is a new commerce secretary, I think he came out today and he was like, it's a Bitcoin reserve.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then we're going to have other things involved.
Okay. Like Solana, XRP, Cardano, ADA.
Yeah, and all of that went crazy that day. And then within 24 hours, it just...
Yeah, it was a 10,000...
It just retracted.
It was a 10,000 movement upwards and then a 10,000 move retracement. Yes.
And we're just back to where we started.
Yep, in the 80s, high
Yeah.
80s.
So I've been thinking about this Bitcoin thing because Bitcoin started with this idea that... And I don't think that the CIA... I'm not in the camp of thinking that the CIA started Bitcoin. I'm in the camp of thinking that someone actually started Bitcoin. And it was like either one or a group of cryptographers that started it. And maybe a couple years in, they're like, we need this. We should get involved. And maybe they start infiltrating. I'm more in that camp.
Yep.
So it was created to be a freedom tool, really.
Yes.
It was supposed to free you from the existing system of banking.
Yes.
That was the goal of Bitcoin.
Yes.
And they, over the years, they have tried to make it collapse.
Yes.
They did not want Bitcoin to succeed.
No, because it's not owned by a nation state. It's not owned by an individual. It's owned by the people.
But right now, they kind of have control of it.
From a majority hash rate, yes.
But I think the real story there for Bitcoin is not how they co-opted it and stole it and hijacked it. I think the real story that no one wants to discuss is that a group of people that were noticing and questioning society and felt like the system was broken, they created a technology and they couldn't actually delete the technology. They would have preferred if it went away forever.
In some cases, yes.
But the governments of the world were like, we can't shake this thing. We have to go get involved. And I think it shows that if you build out something purposely and with intent, that even though they may steal it from you, they can't delete it. The tools and the premise of why Bitcoin created exists and it will forever exist.
Yes.
And it's proof that the people can actually make a difference.
Yes.
That is the most encouraging part of the Bitcoin story. Not that obviously they've co-opted, they stole it, they manipulate it, they like pump and dump it whenever they want. I get it. But they couldn't delete it and ignore it.
They cannot remove the initial philosophical reasons and rationale as to why it was created, number one. And number two, they cannot delete it because it is not owned by a centralized authority. And that chafes a lot of people in power.
Again, they may have taken control of it now, but it's proof to the world that you can actually force them to adjust to you and that you don't have to constantly adjust to them.
Yes, and I think part of the power there behind Bitcoin is, once again, you can add pressure. You can put your thumb on a person and say, like Vitalik Buterin, Ethereum. You could put your pressure on a Vitalik and say, hey, I need you to make sure you do X, Y, and Z. But Bitcoin doesn't have an owner, and so you can't put your thumb on someone and pressure them. What you can do, you use the word co-op, I think that might be a little aggressive. I would say they have engaged heavily in the Bitcoin ecosystem so that not only can they participate in it, number one, but number two, that they can help guide it to their designed intent. And I think that's where it really sits, is that we have the BlackRocks, your State Streets, your big Bank of Americas. You have all these institutions that are now jumping into Bitcoin, which is great because it's going to even deeper entrench it. However, since they have deep pockets, they can, I'll use this word, manipulate it and move it towards their designs. And that's just part of the equation.
So in that light, there are a lot of new technologies that are being implemented into our lives now.
Yes.
I would argue that the jump in technology and how technology affects our daily life will be bigger in the next 20 years than it has in the last 20 years.
No doubt. No doubt. If we follow Moore's law, right, the exponential growth of technology, like 100%. In the next 10 years, we're going to have more happen in the next 10 years in technology than the last 40 combined. For sure.
Quick recap of where we were 20 years ago.
No internets, barely.
We were on dial-up
Yeah,
internet, no high-speed internet.
we had Nokia phones.
We had analog phones,
Yeah, iPhone hadn't come out by then.
not analog. I mean, maybe iPhone 1 or 2, whatever. But it was not what it is now. We did not live on our devices. We did not use GPS. We used maps.
Yeah, I had. Did you have one of those huge America maps in your car?
Atlas maps.
Yeah. Whenever
And
you
you had
needed,
like 4 or 5 of them in your glove
exactly, when
compartment.
you needed to go somewhere, you're like, here's the address. I need to go I-85, and then the 140, and then 285. Yep, it was a different world back then.
We did not have this engaging with the communities via YouTube or whatever apps. Like we did not have this.
Nope.
We did not have our ideas controlled by AI algorithms 20 years ago.
No.
If anything, it was forced to be somewhat linear.
This reminds me of our last podcast when Matt brought up ASL, and he lost half the audience who wasn't even born by then. Age, sex, location, guys. That was the old school 1990s. If you wanted to chat with some rando, you went on AOL AIM or ICQ or Telnet, and the first thing that you would do is you jump into these they were called bulletin boards, BBS, is you'd say ASL.
It was before, hey.
Yeah, because you didn't know who you were talking to, so you're always like ASL, and it's like
Got Riz.
Yeah.
Like this is before that.
20. It was like 19F. Say less. 19F. Location like Albuquerque. Who gives a fuck, right? But I'm talking to a 19F.
Well, and now we know that you were talking to a middle-aged man. Now we know that to be true. At that time, we didn't know any
Unfortunately,
better.
yes. Probably with a neck beard. Yeah, probably with a neck beard.
Yeah. Now we know. At that time,
Man, the shit that I said to those 19Fs, I'll tell you, probably
those 54 M's.
Bro, grossness. Ugh. But yes, those were times of naivete, but there were also innocent times when nowhere in our mental models, Matt, were we ever thinking malfeasance or negativity or psyops. Like that was just not within our decision matrix back then. We were just like, dude, this is so cool. I can connect with, I think this person's in Romania, or I think this person's in Japan. It's like, wow, we're talking. Those were good times, man. Really good times.
So technology has altered completely how we live our lives over the last 20 years. This is not a different, we are in a completely different world.
Completely transformed. Like we are, like if we didn't have the cell phone and the internets, I mean, it would be completely different. We'd actually have Friday nights where you would go out to these parks. Remember that? And no one had cell phones, so it's just all you heard about was Friday night at this park. You roll up and you show up, and it's just tons of high schoolers, some college kids with a beer, maybe a guy with a joint, and it's like, oh, he got some weed. Yeah, those were good times. Those are good times, man.
We actually used checkbooks. And you had to learn how to use a checkbook ledger that was printed on the first inside leaflet.
Exactly.
You know, this is before online banking was a thing. A lot of the world had changed. And if you really think back 20 years, it's crazy how far we've come.
Ridiculous.
The next 20 years will be more radical than what we've lived through already.
100%.
And for maybe if you are 10 years old right now, it's not going to feel that crazy to you. Because for us, being 10 or 20 at that time to now, it didn't feel crazy. Because we're able to keep up with the technology.
Yeah.
If you're 40 or 50 right now, in 20 years, or you're 60 or 70 right now, in 20 years, you'd be like, what the hell's going on?
What do I even do?
You're going to be the person going, damn, like, I still remember, like, rotary phones.
Seriously, I've had conversations with
phone booths.
I've had many conversations with older gentlemen of industry, and they're in their 60s and 70s, and they're holding they hold their phone like this, and they got the big letters on it, right? And I've had conversations surrounding this whole idea, and it's just small conversations where it's like where they you catch them in a moment, and you're like, dude, this technology is like really cool, man. Like I can't believe I can snap this thing and then send it over to my granddaughter. And so the older generation is still perplexed in many ways about what this technology can do for them, and they're just barely keeping up today. And so for those who are 50, 60 now, 20 years from now, when you're 70, you're going to be like, what are these young whippersnappers doing? What is all this technology that's happening? They're not going to have any clue, brother.
So where we are heading, and maybe you can fill into where we're heading right now, what we know for sure, because the administrations are already signaling that this is what's important to them.
Oh yeah.
So this is not conjecture, it's not theory. Like these are actively things that the governments of the world are putting immense resources into. If anything, they are saving money in other programs so they can put more money here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Where all the money is going towards are control systems of control. I think that's a great overarching kind of narrative here, is that they want to control our food. They want to control the skies. They want to control transportation, egress, ingress, egress, where you're going. They want to be able to control what you're thinking about, what you say, right? Everything is moving towards these mechanisms and systems of control, and it's slowly encroaching in on us. And I think in many ways we do not realize how fast these systems are taking over our brains and our lives.
So in 20 years, maybe a quick list of things that I think are for sure going to happen. One, self-driving cars, for sure, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to...
Pending good infrastructure, yes.
Yeah, people aren't going to drive any longer. Number two, robots.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Did you see that one robot in China that like went crazy and started attacking the people? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like these robots they're out in the wild now. These robots are there. We have them in rich people's homes, helping them out do laundry.
So robots. Number three, chips for people's brains.
Oh, for sure. Oh, no, we already have that.
Is that for sure?
For sure. For sure. We already have chips in people's brains. We already have people who are accepting chips in their hands and their arms. We've seen that. We have entire I can remember one commercial where an entire company in Australia, I believe, mandated that all of their employees, I think I'm making this up, like 300, 500 employees, were all required to get the chip in their hand so that they could get into the thing and they could pay for their food at the lunch thing. Like there was a whole, USA Today, silhouette on it.
I think it was like Sweden or Switzerland or
something like this. Yeah, but it was just like
Germany, maybe. I don't remember.
All of your employees accepted this? Why? For convenience sake? Apparently so.
I mean, the alternative is you walk around with this lanyard badge.
I'd rather have the lanyard badge and then have something under my skin that I can't take out. Because if your money is in this chip, they can just turn it off.
So some sort of social credit system that ties your behavior to your record, to your credit, to your financial credit, to your monetary system.
Yes. Social credit score, all of that moves to one word, access. Your social credit score is your access score. That's it.
So that we agree that that's going to happen.
It's already being rolled out, yes.
What else am I missing of those things?
Well,
food. We're going to get into, obviously everything is not genetically modified. We're going to start getting into bug-based foods.
Yeah, we're going to get into completely 100% manufactured foods, nothing organic, nothing natural anymore. And by the way, based on your social credit score and your carbon tax score, you might not be able to get that steak this Thursday because you've gone over your allotted amount of credits. And so there's going to be constraints put on you based on consumption habits. We're already being measured in our consumption habits already. We just don't realize it. And so all of that's going to come to bear. And one day they're going to say, you know what? The only way for you to eat, the only way for you to do trade and commerce and survive is you have to be part of this system. And the system will give you the allotted amount of credits that you can use today, Matt.
Traditional homeownership will not be a thing. Most people, not all, there will be people outside, and we'll talk about the alternatives for people. But majority of people will live in boxes.
Well, it's going to be a rent-based society. You're going to rent everything. You're going to rent your phone, your computer, your car, your house. You're going to rent everything because you're going to own nothing and be exceptionally happy.
You're going to live in a box. Most likely, if you live in a nice box, then you will have some sort of imagery that is displayed onto your walls to make you feel like you're somewhere different.
If you're in a high grade box, you get 6K.
Yeah.
If you're in low grade box, you get 720p. That's what it is, right? Your window outside is 7K, and the guys who pay the cheap price, there's only 720. So it's a little pixelated out there.
720 with just a TV type screen,
exactly,
versus
a full wall
to wall.
Yeah, ceiling to floor screen. Yeah.
So I think that's going to happen also.
Oh, for sure. 100. I say with all confidence.
Yeah.
I mean, humans will and this is sad for me to say, Matt, but I always go back to the basis of human the base of human base, which is you will choose convenience over everything else. Mostly privacy first, but privacy, you give up convenience for privacy, and then secondarily you give up privacy for convenience of access. That is what humanity is all about. We've seen that. We saw that with the mRNA mandates. We saw that with the mask mandates. We're seeing that in other aspects of life, is that people will comply so that they can survive. And you will comply if you want to survive.
Probably the most heavily militarized portions of any country will be to protect mega data centers.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
To make sure that they don't go offline, because that's the core of what drives everything.
Yes, major infrastructure sites. Yes.
And
so here, let me throw a question at you as we're going through this. There are cycles of history, right? We've read these, right? The cycles of history, you guys know these, right? Good men make good times, right? Da 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 da. Bad men make bad times. Da da da. If we consider those cycles, do you think, though, in the next 20 years, there will be an extreme movement to deep conservatism and deep traditionalism? Because sometimes, as the cycles of life go, some people respond to those extreme cycles of life and say, you know what, I'm going to pull back. I'm going to do nothing where the world is going. I'm going to do homesteading. I'm going to make my own farm. I'm going to build my own house. I'm going to go live out in Kentucky, right? Like so my question is, do you think with all of the fast-paced technocracy that's being deployed against us in these next 10 to 15, 20 years, do you think there will be a movement of deep conservatism where people are like, whoa, this is very mark of the beast-ish, and we're just going to, me and my homies, we're going to extract ourselves from this. Do you think that could be a logical option within all of that?
Well, I think that similar communities do exist currently that have pushed back on the last 50 years of technology and innovation. So, like the Amish. The Amish live separated from society. They don't engage with the technology, but they're not growing. Meaning if they're not growing, it means, and they're having a lot of kids, meaning they're losing a lot of people along the way. It's actually not easy to do, right? Because if they have the rate of kids that they have, then technically their community should be growing if they're doing a good job of keeping their kids in.
Right.
But the fact that they're not growing shows that it's actually really difficult to do that.
Oh, for sure.
You know?
Oh, for sure.
I think there is a alternative solution that people will gravitate towards, but it's never going to be the majority.
So what do you, with everything that's getting thrown at us, Matt, I think people will probably care about your opinion and your ideas. So here's the question. What does one do to prepare themselves for this imminent technocracy that's going to be deployed against us?
You know, like I've been thinking about this a lot. You know, is this an idea that, you know, like the dystopian future is coming, and depending on who you are, how you define what that dystopian future is different, right? Some people actually like a lot of technology.
Yes.
I would argue that if technology stopped innovating 50 years ago, our lives would actually be really good still.
I would agree with that.
We didn't add that many value adds in the last 50 years.
Oof. We should probably pull on that string a little bit. Like if you think about,
if technology stopped innovating 50 years ago and said, we've hit the wall, this is all we got, take what's available to you as of 50 years ago, and let's make the best with what we had, actually society would be pretty good. Man. We had running water, you had electricity, you had the ability to communicate. You couldn't communicate 24/7 on the phone,
right?
But I could call my neighbor.
Yeah.
Actually, that's pretty good enough.
That's pretty good.
You were forced to stick within your community, within your neighborhood, and your life was just based on the people around you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had weekly barbecues with the entire community and the entire neighborhood. You knew all your friends because there were only 7 houses down on the right or 5 houses down on the left. And I don't mind saying the names right now. Like when I was living in New Jersey as a young boy, I remember I was in what was it? Slayback Drive, and just 7 houses down was the Landers boys. Just across the street to the far 2 houses over to the right was the Jeremy. 5 houses down to the left was Marcus. He was a knucklehead. Like I remember these kids because
Sorry, Marcus.
Sorry, Marcus. Like I remember these kids because after school, the first thing you would do is you'd hop on your bike, you'd ride over to Marcus or Jeremy or the Landers, where they had the Nintendo, so that was a big deal back then. And those moments, like I could tell you stories for days. I would go over to the Landers boys' house. They were twins, and his dad was this chunky guy. Loved, biggest smile ever. He looked like a Santa Claus. And whenever we would go over there, he'd bust out these old plastic, but these big ramen bowls. And he would throw 2 of those ramens in there for each of us. And, the ramens were like 10 cents each back then. He'd throw 2 of these ramens in there, and he would cook up 4 of these bowls, these big bowls of ramen. And we would just be pounding these things, playing, Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo and Addams Family on the Nintendo. Like, it's all coming back to me now. Like, those moments are moments that unfortunately our kids and people who are having kids today will never have. Because why would you get on your bike after school and roll over to your friend's house? You're just going to text them and say what's going on. And then you're going to spend all your time on that phone talking about what happened at school. It's the world is less deeply connected today because of technology. And I think that's one of the biggest losses that we had. So when you say if technology stopped evolving or growing from 1985 essentially till today, then we would have deeper communal relationships. We have deeper relationships with people. We have probably far more understanding, far more empathetic about cultures and these types of things. So while it's easy for us to look in the past and be all starry-eyed and say, oh, it was better, 50 years ago, the reality is, I think, in many ways, life was definitely simpler and, if I can say, probably better. Probably better.
I mean, we had enough to survive as humanity.
Yeah, and things were good. Things were good back then.
So
we didn't have planes falling out of the sky. We didn't have this thing called ISIS. We didn't have this thing called Hamas. None of this stuff existed back then, right? We didn't have 15-minute cities. We didn't have the Agenda 25, Agenda 30. We didn't have we didn't have AIDS, or maybe AIDS was coming out at that time. That was a Fauci thing, right? Fauci did that.
We had Fauci, so
we did have Fauci, right? So I mean, things were better back then. I'm taking a stroll down memory lane here, Matt.
Yeah, if we had stopped innovating, life would be pretty all right.
It would be fine. I think it would actually be a bit better because we'd know our neighbors.
So what would happen if a community of people are like, dude, I'm just not going to get involved in this new generation of technology, and we're just going to pivot here? Would that actually work? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud now. I haven't thought about this.
Well, let's bring up some precedents. So there's
because the Amish pivoted like way too early.
Did they though? I think they were reacting to the times back then. That was like, whoa, technology and all this stuff is going on, and progressivism. That's not really in our model and our philosophy of how we read the Bible and how we read Christian living. And so their response to extract themselves was well timed per that timing of history. Did they realize that cell phones were going to overtake their youth? Did they realize that technology was going to invade them at some level, that we're going to give them enough incentive to extract themselves from the Amish community and join the regular society? I think that is what they're struggling with, is that technology is so profound, so prolific, and so embedded into everything that it's almost this unfortunate occurrence where if you want to be successful, you want to be productive, you want to be a productive member of society, you almost have to capitulate in some ways, right?
I think it's circling back to where I started, which is I've been thinking about this idea of, the dystopian future is coming depending on your perspective. And there are people that don't want to maybe be a part of it because the system that is being built, the main system that is being built, is controlled by the current same people that control society today. They're building it in order to control you, to limit your movement, limit your communication, limit your commerce, and put you in a category in which they can decide for you how you live your life.
Yes.
This, at this point, anyone watching, listening, agrees to be true.
Yes.
So there's 2 options. You can either Well, three options. One is that you comply.
Mm-hmm.
The second is that you actively try to break down what they're building.
Mm-hmm.
Or the third is you create an alternative reality
Extract yourself, yes.
and you move to another one.
Yeah.
And I've always been on the side of you can't really break down the broken system because it's too big. They have too much money, too much power, too much influence, too many weapons. Like it's not actually that easy to do.
No, not at all.
The best way to combat that, and I'm not the guy to comply. The best way to combat that is to create an alternative, hoping that your alternative is so much better than the original that people just want to join your alternative. And by comparison, it makes the original seem that much more corrupt, which makes sense. But the thought here, or the question is that alternative, is that digital or is that physical? Do you need to create a digital alternative, considering that as of now already, even if technology did not improve, our lives are pretty much digital?
Yes.
90% of all of our interactions with the world are online.
Yes.
Do you want to create a digital alternative reality? Or do you actually need to create a physical alternative world?
The answer that's coming up and rising up in my gut is clearly analog. Clearly analog. Because we have so many examples of digital communities that have arisen. Digital communities with the same moniker, the same vision, and the same mission on their About page. And it goes like this. We are creating a digital community that is extracting ourselves from the political BS. We are going to be free thinkers, and we're going to... You're basically a whole bunch of nothing at the end of the day. Like, you've created a service, a product, where people can sometimes go to remove themselves from their other digital world. When they exit your digital community of analog, deeper connections, whatever that means, they're going to spend 99% of the time in the rest of the digital world that they're used to. And so creating a digital world is nothing but a distraction, number one, or number two, it is a way to self-placate the I'm doing good and I'm removing myself when you're really doing nothing. So I think the short answer is if you want to truly be free, then you're going to have to do the hard labor of physically doing something and going analog, removing yourself. We hear stories of people, in communities creating compounds together, small communities together. The one that I always go to is Orania. You've heard of that? So you can look it up, Will. I'm not going to get everything correct here. But Orania is a nation state in South Africa. It was created in 1991 by Afrikaners, farmers that were in South Africa. What they decided is that during those times, post-apartheid, is that all of the local communities around there did not like them because they're Afrikaners, which means they're white Anglo-Saxons in South Africa. And so instead of getting killed by the locals who said, "Oh, you're racist. Oh, you're sucking our land dry. Oh, you're taking advantage of us. Oh, we're going to attack you. We're going to make your lives hard." These guys, these Afrikaners, these white Anglo-Saxons in 1991 said, "You know what? Fine. You don't like us? We're going to leave." And so a bunch of white Afrikaners left and created this nation state called Orania. Turns out that when these white Anglo-Saxons moved away and created their own nation state of Orania in 1991 in South Africa, they flourished. And now what's happening is the surrounding periphery saying, "You guys are flourishing without us. We need you guys to stop flourishing. We need you to come back and help us." It's like, you can't win. They're either going to kill you because they think that you're taking advantage of them. When you leave and say, "No, Saar, I'm done," they're going to be mad at you anyway because your industriousness and your ability to create commerce and create a lifestyle that's worth living, they can't do it, so they're just going to try to destroy those that are trying to do it. So look up Orania. It's everything basically that I said true.
He's nodding yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so there is precedence of entire people groups, small, leaving the location that they are and saying, "You guys hate us? Fine. We're going to roll our own." And so if you look up the history of Orania, 1991, Afrikaners, you will see that they have thrived by removing themselves and deciding that segregation maybe was a good thing.
Because this concept of a network state or a nation state, these are not brand new concepts.
No.
These are people have constantly attempted and tried. Ghislaine Maxwell herself tried to attempt it. She tried to make the ocean her sovereignty.
Yeah. That's right.
Right? And people actually signed up for their passports and all of this. So people have been attempting it. It's not the easiest thing to do.
No.
Right? In order to actually be a recognized nation state or a network state, the hardest part is getting treaties.
Yes.
You have to have other countries recognize you.
Yep.
Otherwise, you don't actually have your sovereignty.
Well, because you can't trade.
Yeah, you need to figure out how to do the sovereignty part, right? Otherwise, they can always just come and take you.
It's all about commerce. You got to be able to have commerce. If you don't have commerce, you're not going to survive.
And it's also very difficult to do within the United States.
Oh, for sure.
Because the United States does not like sovereign nations popping up within its borders, even if it's 10 people.
Yeah. Didn't we have one pop up in Portland?
Oh, the autonomous zone?
Yeah, what was the autonomous zone in Portland, Oregon called?
Was it Seattle?
Or was it Seattle? It was some weird ass name.
It was during COVID.
Yeah, it was during
the BLM part.
What was that thing called?
I thought it was called autonomous zone.
It was an autonomous zone, but it had a name, and the name was so bobo. It was so like
Chaz.
Yeah. Chaz was created during BLM.
That's really retarded.
And they didn't survive.
They couldn't, because they realized that when you
they were anarchy.
They were anarchy, but when what they realized is the base of humanity, which is simply this: if you go off on your own, you actually have to work. That's what they didn't want to do. Is they created this Chaz zone, and they realized that if they wanted for this Chaz autonomous zone to actually make it, they actually had to work. They had to build commerce. They had to build trade. They had to build food and farms. And Lord knows, you would not want a liberal cuck to ever have to work for their meal or work for what they need to do, right? And so complete failure. If I remember correctly, there's a dead body. Someone died in Chaz, and they wouldn't even let the local police take the body out because they were so anarchist, and they'd rather let that body just die and disintegrate on the road there. And so these separate countries are extracting yourself, bad idea in America. In other countries, apparently, for example, in South Africa, Orania, apparently it's possible.
There was a guy in Soji that wrote this post about sovereignty and about trying to escape the system, etc. And he had this line at the end, which it was I loved. It said, it has come to this generation, we have to be the ones that push back. And this has to be for a greater cause than just shekels. We have to be the men who plant trees of which we will never enjoy the shade.
Yeah, that's that quote. When's the best time to plant a tree? Now, even if you don't benefit from it. And I like that idea, because it for me, as an entrepreneur and venture capitalist, for me the solution to that question is always start now. Start now. Start now. Don't wait. I had a conversation, if I may. I had a conversation with my daughter, who's a teenager. And she was telling me about this streamer that she likes to watch. And she was telling me, man, I watched this person for 3 or 4 years, and I watched them grow. Man, I remember, Appa, when you had me start streaming my Minecraft 5 years ago. And I was like, why did you quit? You started, you were good at it. You were having fun, right? But you're giving me the story of this one streamer that you've been watching. That could have been you. Start now. And even the goal is not to start now and make sure that you're successful in that endeavor. You know as well as I do as a business builder, Matt, that your original substantiation of that idea is going to be changed 9,000 times before you get to the final result. And so the message to my daughter was start now. Do something now. The goal is not to make that thing happen. The goal is to keep executing, keep trying, keep learning. You will find that which you enjoy through that. So that quote, build the tree now, is that the call for our generation today? Is that we need to do the hard work to build these trees now for our younger generation to appreciate the shade? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think a lot about what's life going to be like in 20 years, obviously, because my daughter is 2.5 years old.
Yeah.
In 20 years, this is exactly what I have to prepare her for.
And by the way, it'll come like this.
Yeah. And for you, it's 10 years.
Less. I got teenagers now.
But in 20 years, life will be completely different. We need to prep our future generation on how to handle that, because what we teach them now, actually, you have to think ahead to make sure that they're prepared for that moment, because if anyone that teaches them exactly what they need to know right now, what they're learning is useless in 20 years.
It's going to be outdated.
Completely outdated.
If I can give you an example, I learned in college in the late 90s, early 2000s, these coding languages in college through courses. None of that shit's used today. Like they taught, I was in these classes. None of that coding language have any value today. We were learning outdated material as it was becoming outdated.
Yeah.
So no doubt, absolutely, the stuff that people are learning today, in 20 years is going to have almost.
And the education system is so slow. So by the time they keep up, they catch up. The few people that understood it early will be way ahead of everyone else. We're going to create this huge dichotomy and separation of people that understand it and don't understand it. And it's not going to be your fault or your kid's fault. It's just what's around them.
So can I create an indictment on our older generation, the
Okay.
boomers? What you're asking for is exactly what the boomers haven't done.
Yes.
I mean, and I'm going to sound really rude to maybe our boomer, colleagues and followers and subscribers here, but I'm just going to speak plainly here. It is abundantly clear to me that the boomers have completely been selfish, and you can't blame them for that.
You can't.
They have limited, foresight about what's coming up. You lived in a grand golden age where you could literally pay your house off in 5 years on your salary in the 80s.
I mean, there was also no precedent or history on how fast this thing called technology can move.
Fair enough.
So, like, they don't know what they don't know.
Fair enough. They don't know what they don't know. However, they do know today, as 70 and 80-year-olds, they do know today where the world is headed. And so, if I can create a massive dig on the boomer generation, the boomer generation today should be making policies that are valuable for the younger generation instead of continuing to persevere on policies that only help them. You're going to be dead in 20 years. It's not a bad thing. It's just a reality. You're going to be dead in 20 years. So the policies you should be making today should probably help the younger generation who literally cannot survive on a full-time job. They have to have roommates. They cannot have the entertainment they wanted. They will never be able to own a house ever based on their salary and inflation. And in most cases, they will never get under the crippling debt of the university debt plus retail debt. Like the boomer generation has failed the younger generation in terms of policies that are forward-thinking and progressive to help them, because the boomers, they're not going to be around for another 20, 15 years.
Well, and that's why it's important that we have this conversation, because if you're a grandparent, if you're a parent, and you're thinking, I'm just going to make sure my kid is in a good school, and they're just going to follow along with what the system does, and maybe they're going to get in a good college, and I hope they become a doctor or a lawyer. If that's your mentality at this point in life, like, you are doing your kids a disservice.
Yeah, you've lost the narrative.
Because that's what they're going to try to do to your kids. That's how they're going to trap your kids, and they will live purely in that system of the 80% that we said, that rely on the system of control, that rely on these social credit scores, that rely on these manufactured foods. This is what you're preparing them for.
So let me ask you this: it's two extremes. Would you rather live in abject freedom, where you are not living a luxurious life? You don't have access to everything, right? You have to struggle bus it to survive, but you are completely autonomous. You are completely free. Versus all your needs are met. Everything's given to you. All you know is that you pay $1,800 a month and all of your services work.
You want, at least your future generation, you want them to grow up in the system that's outside the system. Because at least then they have options. If you grow up outside the system, you always have the opportunity to go and join the system if they choose to do so.
Yes.
If you grow up in the system, you have no idea what it means to live outside the system. And I think the perfect example of that is that right now in Ivy League schools, they accept a huge percentage of kids that were homeschooled.
They do.
That's like the indicator they are in the top schools in the country. They don't want kids that grew up in their own system because they already know what they have. And what they have in their mind is not original. They don't add value. They're actually very interchangeable and replaceable.
Oh, yeah. They're just cogs in the wheel of a machine.
They want the kids that had to learn how to think on their own, and they're bringing them in. And they're actually going out and trying to recruit kids that are homeschooled and have showed high competency.
I read an article on that. Yeah.
Correct. So if we fast forward 20 years and you're growing up in this system of kind of within this blockchain type box, which everyone's going to be, everything's tracked, they're going to want the kids that are grown up and raised outside of that box.
That's a true story. Everything you said. It's such a bait and switch, though. It's such a rug pull.
Yeah.
Because they're companies, they're institutions. Like you say it's a school, it's a business at the end of the day. Like it's a business, period, full stop. These businesses want the best and the brightest. Fair. They want those that are going to help increase their notoriety, increase, let's say Harvard, increase their legacy, increase their influence across the world. They want people who are going to be able to do that. The problem is the children and the kids and the students that are growing up in the matrix system are mind-controlled, useless bots.
They're workers.
They're workers. They might have gotten a 1560 on their SAT, fair enough, but they're not creative individuals. And so it's a rug pull if you think about it, because all these automaton students that are bots that got 1560, 1580 on their SATs are going to Harvard. Harvard doesn't really care about them. Harvard wants the homeschooled ones who are going to make them more money, more notoriety. But at the same time, they're
possibly create a solution.
Right. But they're not going to tell the robot kids that they're not valuing them.
Because
right?
you need to feed the machine.
You need to feed the machine. So it's this really like bipolar business model where it's like, yeah, these kids are a bunch of chaff and we don't care about them, but they pay the bills. All right, let's keep funneling them in. But what we really want is that kid from Nebraska and that kid from outstate Kentucky and that kid from upstate Georgia, because those kids, they have real ideas. And
yeah,
so,
they want different perspective. They want something that, if you take the kids that grew up in the system, they already know what those ideas are because they've been indoctrinated to the system.
they're just parrots. They're going to repeat back, everything they heard.
But in order to innovate, because technology is constantly innovating, they need original ideas.
Yes.
And you can only get that by going outside the system. So if you want to give your child and this is my viewpoint, I don't know if it's true. This is my perspective. If you want to give your child maximum opportunities, like you want them to be outside the system.
Oh yeah, for 100%.
You know?
100%. 100%.
And I think that's more important today than ever before.
No doubt. No doubt. So my kids are in teenage years, so we're starting to have very light, but conversations about college, conversations about higher education. And I'm preparing my children for a stark reality that they don't have to go to higher education if they don't want. I will never force them to. And I think I have enough perspective to be able to say that because I have 3 graduate degrees and my wife has graduate degrees and we've been through that system. So for us to be able to say, we've been there, we know what it is. You don't have to do it, but you have to be a productive member of society. And so the thing that we're focused on with our children as they move into their teenage years and upper teenage years is to enable them and give them options and expose them to the rest of the world. And if I may say, I think one of the best things that opens up your eyes more than any education, travel, man. Travel. I had a conversation with long story short, I had a conversation with a streamer years ago. And this streamer was a little bit rude, not dissimilar to what I experienced previously, but he was a little bit more cordial. But the point of the story is that at one point in that conversation, I simply asked him, hey, man, what countries have you traveled to? And he's like, what does that matter, man? It doesn't matter. I was like, no, it actually does. Like, tell me, I'm curious. Where have you traveled to? He's like, man,
Cancun.
Something like, yeah, it was, he's never left America was the point.
Yeah,
and I looked
Toronto.
and I looked at him and I was like, I respect your opinion, but your opinion is deeply, deeply, deeply shallow. Like, you don't know what the world sees. You don't know how the world acts. You don't know other people groups. So for you to say this is how the world works, or this is how everything it works, you lack perspective, sir. You lack perspective, Saar, right? You need to check into soju.soj.oo and you need to see and engage with different perspectives, because if you don't, you're going to be in an echo chamber repeating the same stuff over and over and over again.
You need to figure out how to expand. And okay, you said travel. And I agree.
Travel, dude.
Travel is like the most important. Travel the world, go to some weird countries, go see how the other side lives. Like, this is really important. I believe so. I think that my worldview is created only because I've traveled so much.
100%. 100%.
But, big exclamation point, bold, but.
The SARS would like that.
Big but.
Big butts. Ooh.
If we go into a place in society where they limit your movement and your travel based on your compliance to the system being built, how do you combat that?
Well, the short answer is what you just brought up earlier, which is you must begin extracting your children and yourself now so that they have options, so that they can choose to be part of the Borg if they'd like, or they can continue to persevere outside of it, or have some middle ground where they have to integrate with the Borg a little bit to be successful. But the point still remains. If you do not grow yourself, your children, your family outside of the system, then you will always be compliant to the system.
You think there'll ever be a place in American society where they're like, oh, you don't have our federal digital ID and you don't have your social credit score, so we're actually not going to let you get on a plane?
100%.
Then how do you travel?
You need to comply.
But what if you don't want to comply?
You need to kiss the ring. You need to make sure that you go to DC and kneel at the pontificate and kiss the ring.
This is the problem of like this physical.
But this is like China.
Escape, right?
China's
and
already done this.
Physical reality.
There are reports of millions of Chinese who cannot get on the subway because their social credit score is too low. They cannot get on the bus. They cannot get access to social services, government services, because their social credit score is too low. Like, this is a reality.
And the flip side of that,
you know this.
No, I completely know it. It's controlled. You can't. Everything's censored. You can't move freely. But
they have billboards where if you're a jaywalker, they will make sure that everyone in that location knows your face, that you're a jaywalker.
Correct.
Like this type of bullshit.
But they live in a cleaner society, a safer society.
We've both been to China, yes.
They live in a more organized society.
It's a more respectful society. It's almost like a respectful, compliant society, yes.
And there are people in this country, in the United States, going, I'm willing to make that trade-off. I'm willing to restrict my freedom of speech. I'm willing to give up my ability to move. I'm willing to accept the fact that maybe I can't do everything I want. But in turn, I live in a safer, cleaner place. Is a trade-off worth it?
If you put it like that.
Because that's going to be a selling point, by the way. That is the selling point in order to get people to comply.
You half sold me.
Yeah.
You have, like, I'm not going to lie to you. That sounded pretty damn good.
Yeah. You have more control. You won't feel it only at the fringe. You only feel the control at the fringe.
Right.
And maybe, we'll frog boil a little bit and slowly close in the walls because that's what they always do.
Yeah.
But when you first comply and join in, it's going to look like a vast world.
And it's going to be great.
And it's going to shrink over time, and you're not even going to feel it. It's going to be algorithmic control, maybe some restriction. Maybe your AI-driven car can only go certain places. Like, why would I want to go where my car can't go anyway? You know, like, that's really inconvenient. You don't feel like they're controlling you. It's just a range problem.
You're not wrong. And I've experienced this 100%. Have I ever told you my story of a Disney cruise? Have I never? No?
Okay. I am not a Disney guy. My wife has said to me multiple times, we got to go to Disneyland. And I said, no. So we should go on a Disney cruise because Peter and his wife, they love Disney cruises. And we should go on it too.
Is that what your wife said to you?
Yeah. I said no.
He definitely told us a story where you get a bracelet and he has like access to everything and how much he loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just retell it. Let me just retell it quickly.
Taylor Swift and Disney. I just want to put it out there.
Guys.
Right?
No, don't clip that shit, bro. No.
Taylor Swift and Disney.
I have to tell it. I'll tell it quick. We have been on Disney Cruise 3 times. There are tiers of Disney Cruise.
Pure true love.
There are different tiers of Disney Cruise. You can go on a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day, etc. And in those tiers, you can choose the 10 grand, the the $5,000, the 10 grand. We went for the 25 grand. Okay, so I'm just gonna put it out there. We are top tier Disney cruise, biggest bang for your buck, brother. There was never a point in my life where I've accepted the Borg so deeply.
Yeah.
I gave them.
Compliance tastes delicious.
That was like his trial run on getting the chip.
Bro,
You know?
I'm all honesty to everybody out there. I paid the 25 grand. We literally put our wallets in our luggage for 5 days. Never took them out. They replaced the wallet and your cell phone because you don't have connection with a bracelet. And that bracelet has everything. It knows everything about you. And if you're paying 25 grand, they're swapping the food out every 2 hours. And the butlers and the concierge, they come up to you and they say, "Hey, Mr. Saddington, how did you know my name?" "I don't know. We know that you really enjoyed those eggs over easy and the hash browns and the big strawberries yesterday for breakfast. We're going to bring those to you. Would you also like the Belgian one?" "How did you know?" For 5 days, friends, I was served like a king. All I had to do is give all of my access and my entire livelihood over to them. And I'll tell you, Matt, those 5 days, that's why we've been on a Disney cruise 3 times, bro. It's so good. It's so good to be served. But at the same time, when you're extracted from it, after it's all done, you're like, fuck, they had my entire life.
They had your balls
They had
in their fingertips.
They had more than my balls. They had my soul, dude. They were feeding me so... I have to say this. I think it was the 3rd day. I was tired. My wife and the kids, we landed in some island, and they went out for the morning. And I was just like, man, I'm tired. I don't want to go out. I just want to chill. So I'm up on the balcony overlooking the waters, and I hear a knock on the door. And it's like, oh, well, maybe it's the cleaning people. Hear some footsteps. Guy opens up the door to outside a little bit, leans his head over. He says, "Mr. Saddington." And I'm just laying there in the sun. I'm like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" He's like, "I understand yesterday you had this and this and this and this for breakfast. I think you really enjoyed it. So I'm going to bring you those. And I got some other options for you." And I looked at him and I said, "Bro, just feed me." And I ate, Matt, from 10 o'clock, I've told the story before, to 2 in the afternoon.
See,
4 hours straight. This motherfucker brought me like 12 dishes. And I just kept eating, and I was done. I handed it to him. He would come back with 4 hours. I gained probably 20 pounds in those 4 hours. It was so good to be a fat fuck getting fed, bro. Oh, so good.
This story is exactly what life will be like.
It was good. I ain't gonna lie.
For the very few
Yes.
that pay for the top tier,
Yeah.
your life may be fantastic.
Oh, it was good.
For the people who got the discount plan, that got not a oceanside room, but they have their 4 kids and they're in the interior room,
Yes, that's true.
and you are shuttled around like cattle,
They are.
and you get to eat between this time and this time.
True.
And if your kids don't get ready in time, like, we may have some cold pizza left over for you because you are out of the feeding window.
Yes, you're off schedule.
And if you want to leave the boat at the predetermined stop, you can wait in the 2-hour line to get out. You must return 2 hours early, or we may leave you behind. Spend 4 hours a day to do a 1-hour excursion to go buy some made-in-China souvenirs at your predetermined location of stop.
It's almost like he's done the Disney cruise.
The experience for people are very different.
Oh, no doubt.
And when you create a dystopian future, there is a segment of society that will benefit greatly from systems of control. Because what it does is you, as a top tier person, enjoy the benefit. And for the majority of them and the majority of the people on the cruise, the controls are in place to make sure they stay out of your way.
And when I was at the Disney cruise, I'll tell you, I saw no riffraff.
They push them aside. You have your own special line.
I had my own bar and cafeteria.
Of course.
Dude, they had unlimited everything.
This is Snowpiercer, and you're in the first half of the bus.
I was in the front half of the bus.
You're in the front half of the train.
For sure. 100%.
And there is a huge segment of society, actually more people, that live on the back side of that train.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not going to lie to you about the experience. It was absolutely what you say. There was a clear delineation of class.
So there are various solutions here. One solution is that you work your ass off. You understand that the benefits you receive in society are at the detriment of other people in society around you. It is what it is. You can ignore it. You can pretend like it's not true, but it's true. And the argument is that, well, that 1% pays more to cover the expense of everyone else. That's always a rationale. That's exactly what first class in a plane is, right? The first class pays for everyone else, which is why we cram everyone in the back, and that's why 6 people sit in the front.
That's right.
Because those 6 people pay more than the whole back combined.
And if it's international travel, you're not wrong.
So it's either you put your life in a situation where you are sitting in the front of the plane, front of the train, top floor, oceanside suite on the Disney cruise.
Yep. With
Option 1.
With concierge.
Or you have to figure out how to get on a different train.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know what the solution is.
So I've had this conversation with colleagues before, and what we end up always with, because we're a bunch of degens and we're a bunch of unfeeling fucks, is simply this: we have to be rich. Like it's a sad determination, but at the end of the day, it's like we have to be rich, because the only way to be in the system but not controlled by the system fully is you have to be able to afford the highest echelons of the system, which gives you more freedom to roam about the cabin, if you know what I mean, right? If you cannot afford the provisions, if you cannot afford the amenities, if you cannot afford the luxuries, then you'll be afforded minimal ability to move about the cabin, right? You're hanging out with the cattle in the back. And so it sounds terse, it sounds unfeeling, but whenever me and my colleagues and we talk about these types of things, the short answer always ends up being, we have to be rich then. Because Lord knows if you're not rich, you're back there with the cattle. I know it sounds unfeeling, but it's an economic equation at this particular point in time, you know?
And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me, because I actually agreed with you like years ago, that you need to figure out how to improve your life and put yourself in a situation to afford yourself those luxuries in life.
Yes. I feel like I know exactly the conversation we had like years ago. Yeah, about this. Yeah.
Now, I'd rather just like figure out how to like make the back better.
Oh, you're that kind of guy now.
I feel like I am. I have like almost zero desire to figure out how in life to get to that top tier and enjoy it, knowing that there are people out there that even if they tried, they'll never make it there. Because that's how the system is. We've had this conversation, this idea of meritocracy in America. It's like the biggest PsyOp anyone's ever been told, because that's not true.
It's not.
Meritocracy is a factor, but the reality is that like who you know, your network, and your relationships are more important than meritocracy. Actually, the best combination is to have relationships, network, know the right people, and be competent. But if you had to choose one, meritocracy is a clear number 2 to being in the right network of people.
And I would say it's a clear number 3. I think it's 3 things. It's competency and capabilities will get you only so far.
Yeah.
Network is what will get you farther. And the worst part, and I hate saying it, but I've said this before, your willingness to compromise on values.
Whoa.
Brother, I speak from my own experience. I do my best to be a man of...
True.
I do my best to be deeply competent and capable. Agreed? I'm not the smartest and the sharpest tool in the tool shed. No, but I am a hard worker. Number 2, do I have a vast network? Absolutely. I'm proud of the network that I've built over decades of work. But number 3 is my biggest constraining factor. I am not willing to compromise on certain things, which is why I'm not as successful as some others. And people might say, hey, Peter, you're white. No. I know for a fact that my limitations in certain aspects of financial deployment have been constrained because I'm not willing to sell my soul. I've made those decisions definitively, distinctly, and specifically. And I have sorely been sometimes even regretting the fact that I stood by my principles. Just in all honesty. It's like, fuck, I gave away that opportunity because my values at the point in time were so important to me. And I say this with a little bit of facetiousness, but at the same time, like, don't be deceived. Like, this is a true struggle as a deployer of capital in the money world. Like, I have to make the best decisions for the money that I get to be responsible to it for my investors. I cannot waver on my principles and guiding principles and values that I said would be my deployment thesis. And when opportunities arise to go outside that thesis, where the multiples are extraordinary, I have said no, which is why, as you well know, I will always say no to shit coins and the meme coins, because that is an area where I said no, and I will never waver from it. But I'll tell you, I have had DMs where I'm literally just fucking 2 clicks away from making like $100,000, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, but it's never worth it to me. And so that's the reality. That's the reality. Are you willing to compromise on your values? That is what gets you to the highest levels.
The combination of all three is probably the deadliest combination.
Yeah.
And we see that in life all around us.
Yeah. All of the major influencers, all the conservative influencers, they have a little bit of competency. They have a pretty big
But
network.
that's my concern, is that the people who are competent, people who have network, and most importantly, like you mentioned, which people are willing to compromise on their values.
Oh, yeah.
That have very little integrity.
Oh, yeah.
These are the people that run our society. These are the people that run our institutions. These are the people that are driving the society to this new technological future. I don't see how this ends well. I just don't see how, because those are people in charge. If they're the ones steering the ship, there is no way that they steer the ship in the right direction. Then what do you do to escape that, knowing that that is literally getting on a train that's eventually going to run into a brick wall? But if you are outside of it, like, your life is just not going to be as good. You're not going to be on the Disney cruise. You're going to be on like the alternative cruise line that has more fairness for everyone, but it's not going to be as good as Disney.
Nothing is as good as Disney at the highest levels.
This is the problem.
Yes, this is the problem. So what you're saying, Matt, if I can recapitulate back what you just said, is that you're saying that not all, but most of the leaders of today are compromised individuals from a value perspective?
I mean,
and that's not a good combination for good leadership and good future. Is that what you're saying?
I've been trying to figure out like who's like a real good person that I think deserves to be in charge. Like, who's a good person that I feel like if they were to keep on going in the direction that they do, that it'd be worth following or going along for the ride for what they're doing.
Have you come up with an individual?
I can't think of one person.
I'm curious.
I can't think of one person.
Well, I've heard you
And
talk.
maybe people watching, maybe they have an idea of someone that, like, dude, you really check this person out.
I've heard you talk about Tucker very well.
Yeah, but he's like past this. He's past a point in life of wanting to be an activist, of wanting to change society. It's just not something that he cares about as much anymore.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
You know?
And
it takes a certain amount of fire and maybe a little bit of youth in order to say, I'm willing to take risk in order to save the people.
yeah,
The most revolutionary moments of history, of the world, are actually led by young people.
yeah,
Because you have to be willing to do it.
your risk tolerance is very high.
I mean, there's got to be some guy out there in his mid-20s that are like, I'm going to die for this. And I get it. And I understand it. Like, they must exist. Maybe it's a goal of mine to go find them.
Maybe if you're out there and you're a spitfire of a young blood in your mid-20s and you have a chip on your shoulder and an axe to grind, maybe you should join soj.oo and let us know, soju.oo, and let us know about who you are, because maybe, just maybe, you could be the next shining knight that goes on an epic quest to save the world.
I think that, society always says, oh, Gen Z, Gen A, they're lost and they only care about, TikTok, and they only care about video games, and they only care about meme coins.
And stroking their peens.
And that's what they say about them all the time. And I think that's by design. That's intentional.
That's the PsyOp.
It's to keep
them down.
kids of that generation that feel like they can do something and make them feel like, no, you can't. You're a fuck up. You can't do shit. Shut up. Go sit down. Go play some video games.
Yeah.
But the reality is that we should be encouraging them. We should be raising them up, because maybe those people with more of a utopian viewpoint in society, the ones that haven't been so corrupted, the ones that haven't had the ability to sell their soul over and over and over and over again, maybe we shouldn't be empowering them. Because again, throughout history, the reason this country exists is because those guys said, we're going to do something about it.
Yes. And if Will could do a little bit of diligence real quick, if I remember correctly, I'm going to get this wrong, of course, I believe the average age of the signatories of the Declaration of Independence was like 24 years old.
I think it was like 26, 27.
Okay, so
Maybe on the high 20s, but yes, young.
young. I mean, I know that there were some signatories that were like 21.
Yeah. They were not
44.
50.
Oh, 44. We were way off. Okay, 44. So regardless, the average age of our Senate is 62.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So there's clear differential here, right? They built them differently back then, right?
What is the average age of Congress?
Let's
I'm
look.
curious.
Let's look that up. So the average age of the signatories, signers of the Declaration of Independence is 44. But we know for a fact that some of them are super young in their 20s. What's the average age of our Congress?
Well, because we had one kid that jumped in Soji. He's like, hey,
58.
well, one kid in Soji, he came in and said, hey, I'm in college and I'm happy to be here. I watch the pod. We have a small group of friends and it's growing every day. And it's a group of us that are starting to wake up and understand what's going on in the world. And I just want you to know that we're here too. And I was like, dude, bring the crew. How amazing
Our hearts go out
would
to
it
you.
be if within Soju, it was a bunch of 20, 30-year-olds, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23-year-olds that were like, we're going to make a difference. We understand the system is broken. We want to make change. And what if they started gathering? That would actually be amazing. I would do everything I could to support them.
I don't know, man. When you start talking about mass organization of humans, that puts a big magnifying glass over you, don't you think?
This is my knock on Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate had at one point gathered up all the young men.
He was in a great position to activate them for sure.
He gathered all the young men and he convinced them, rightfully so, don't be slaves to the matrix. Wake up, go out and do something difficult, make some sacrifice, be a man.
Fair enough.
That's where he started.
Fair enough. Yeah. That was basically his message. Yeah.
And the youth and the men, they were gathering in troves, hundreds of thousands of them all over the world.
Yep.
And at some point, the system bore him down. The system started going after him. Whether or not he deserved it or not, secondary. They came after him with stuff that they didn't have to. And all of a sudden, he like left that message. And it's like, dude, like, why don't you guys buy some more meme coins? It's like, wait, what happened?
What happened?
You had an opportunity to gather them up and lead them to actually force real change. You had the power to do it. And it didn't happen. And it's kind of a lost opportunity, I think, because not many times in our life do we see the young men of society gather like that.
So if I'm going to bring up a conversation you and I had in private about Andrew Tate, and you don't have to share if you don't want, but what we essentially came to the conclusion of in that conversation is that we believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but we believe that Andrew Tate has been spoken to harshly multiple times and have engaged with the upper echelons of power multiple times. And so in our conversation, we both agreed that while it's unfortunate that he's changed his message, we at the same time can't blame him, because man can only take so many beatings until they capitulate merely for survival's sake. And so I wonder, has Andrew Tate been so beaten down? Like, the system is rough, so beaten down, where it's like, brother, I can't beat the machine. And you know what? They keep telling me that they're going to feed me, and they're going to feed me, and they're going to keep feeding me like a Disney cruise. And you know what? It's a pretty good life. What do you think?
when the system shows up and points their gun at your face and you say, I gotta protect my family, and you choose your family over your mission, I think I understand. I think most people understand that.
Yeah.
I think that's why this type of movement and these types of radical changes and revolutionary changes are always led by young men.
Yeah, without families or kids.
Because they don't have that.
Yeah.
They don't have that, for the lack of the word, they don't have that weight that they have to carry around with
That
them.
responsibility.
You know? So I think he just aged up. You know, he was maybe this fiery guy, and he's still fiery, but his message isn't the same as it was before.
It's diluted, yeah.
You know,
He does have kids.
he does have kids, and he has family, and they showed up at his house with guns, like over and over and over again.
Yep.
And
That'll do it.
after a while, you're like, dude, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life?
It's a valid question.
I get that. I totally understand that. And anyone's like, oh, he sold out. Like, dude, why don't you let them show up at your house like 5 times and 6 times and get thrown in a prison for 30 days at a time and get your actual movement restricted, and you have to go and beg for permission to go somewhere, do something, live like that for a year, 2 years, and say that you would have done the same.
And get all your possessions taken from you.
Yeah.
And
Again,
all your
this
hard
is
work.
not saying like him or hate him. It's just the reality of what a man had to deal with. And when he kind of dilutes his message, when he kind of rolls it back a little bit, it's part of it is just survival instinct.
Yeah. So that, like, there's so much tension in me right now with this conversation. And we don't have to go into the deeper nuances of it, but the tension is like, we know that the system is bad. If the system was good, we wouldn't be talking about it.
We wouldn't exist.
We wouldn't exist. Matt Kim Podcast wouldn't exist if the system was good, right? So we all agree the system is bad. The system will continue to be bad for the next generations unless we support, equip, empower, enable, and help the younger generation to help change it. Because frankly, you and I are old guard. In some ways, we're actually part of the problem because we're deeply entrenched in the system.
Yes.
So, like, we want to help equip, enable, empower the younger generation. We want them to take on the risk and risk exposure of doing these types of things. But at the same time, we cannot blame our colleagues in the mid-40s and higher who have been beaten down, have had guns in their faces, have had possessions taken. Like, at the same time, it's hard to look at them and say, you gave up. I feel like I can't say that to them. I feel like the words that I would say would be, I understand. And that is like, where's the balance between I understand the capitulation versus change needs to happen and we need champions?
It's like where we started with this whole conversation of Bitcoin. It's not what it was supposed to be.
Right.
But it created an opportunity for future technologies that those technologies can exist. This idea of breaking people free from the matrix, understanding that we are controlled by algorithms, we are controlled by technology, that there are people that literally tell people you can't say that any longer.
Yes. Got a lot of that this week. I'm a Nazi, apparently.
That has been exposed. Most of the future generation understands it now. And if anything, people like Andrew or people like what we're doing, we've brought light to that situation. And because of that, they don't have to run into that pitfall again.
I get it.
Right?
I'm with you. Yeah,
We've stepped on that first mine.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
Right? We stepped on that first mine. They know where that first mine is, meaning they can go one step further. It's this analogy I've heard many times of, the 5-minute mile. It took thousands of years for someone to break the 5-minute mile.
And then once it was broken.
As soon as it's broken, you can't compete at a high level unless you run less than 5-minute mile.
Yep. It's fascinating how that
It
works.
just needed someone to do it first.
Someone had to break that glass ceiling.
You got to be a pioneer.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's what we're a part of. And I'm encouraged, hoping that a future generation can figure this out. Maybe something that we don't see because we learned technology as it was being built.
Yeah.
The kids that grew up and was born with technology, they understand it even better.
And differently.
which is why the top crypto guys are all 21, 22, 23.
True.
Which is why the top AI guys are 21, 22, and 23.
True.
And then you got guys like the AI whistleblower who was like 23 years old, 24 years old.
Yeah. Super smart.
That got murked for being a whistleblower.
Deleted. Yep.
He was trying to do the right thing.
He was.
There's a ton of them out there. Right?
So-
Like something's not right with this technology. We need to figure it out because it's going to take us a bad road. The people that are in charge are these guys in their 70s and 80s. They have no idea how the technology works. They have no idea what the repercussions are. They themselves don't have to live with the repercussion of the decisions they make.
Yes.
It's the same reason why Congress should not be deciding wars,
Yes.
because they will never fight in a war. They themselves will never send their own kids to a war, but yet they start all the wars.
Yep.
It's the same exact thinking.
I love it.
These are the people that are running our technology right now, making decisions, funding all the projects, and they do it purely for self-gain.
You got it. I like how you brought this back home, full circle. Makes me feel good that what we're doing is actually valuable.
I think it's very valuable.
It is. We are willing to ask the questions. We say this all the time on podcasts, right? We're willing to ask the tough questions. We're willing to try to encourage the younger generation to step up, do something with their lives, be responsible. Don't be part of the Borg. Don't be part of the machine. So in a lot of ways, we are sanctifying ourselves in this Matt Kim podcast by providing value and encouragement to the younger generation. If that's all that we have, I think that's pretty good. That's a pretty good job.
Thank you for being a part of our mind vomit this week. That's what it was.
Yes, it was.
Appreciate you. Hope you got to think about something different, something new. And maybe, if anything, let's go out and encourage the next generation to be the leaders that we need them to be, because otherwise we're fucked.
We are.
See you next week.